Hello and dear audience. This is Generation Next and I'm your presenter, Sarah Chor. Generation Next is a youth movement platform geared towards inspiring, motivating, and directing young people's participation towards responsibilities in the developing society. We are working to raise awareness on issues, the youth are faced with in order to effect a positive change. It is therefore against this background, we shall continue to be here every fortnight to make sure that we continue the inspiration and the motivation. My guest today, Dr. Ismaila Badjie, is a highly experienced and accomplished pharmacist and healthcare solution entrepreneur. Born in the Gambia, Dr. Badjie spent his early childhood in Belgium and New York as the son of a Gambian diplomat before returning home to complete his schooling. Sorry for that break. He later returned to the United States to continue his education and in a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry from Tennessee State University in 2008 and a Doctor of Pharmacy from Purdue University in 2013. Dr. Badjie began his professional career in North Carolina as a licensed pharmacist and has amassed over a decade of experience in the pharmacist industry, serving in multiple capacities in community practice. In 2015, Dr. Badjie founded Innovax Global Health, where he currently serves as the CEO, focused on leveraging technology to bridge the gap in access to quality healthcare solutions. Dr. Badjie currently resides in Charlotte, North Carolina, with his wife, Adama, and a 3-year-old daughter, Aisha Hadi. He is passionate about athletics and remains very active in CrossFit, basketball, and golf in his spare time. Dr. Badjie, it is with utmost pleasure that we have you here on Generation Next today.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Congratulations on the platform, and it's really an honor joining you guys today on what I hope will be a very fruitful discussion. So thank you so much.
We are most welcome. So basically, like I said, this platform it's geared towards inspiring and motivating. And of course, having gone through your biography, I'm sure any young Gambian currently would be quick to say, I wish I had the opportunities he had. Take us through that part.
No, thank you so much. And I think it's interesting that you use the word opportunities that I had. I would even say grateful for some of the privileges I've had, because obviously we don't control what we're born into. And I would say I've been very privileged to have experiences that have allowed me to live and learn from so many different parts of the world. But on the backdrop of that privilege or opportunity is also a responsibility that I hold very dear to my heart in terms of, okay, how do we start using all the things that we've been blessed to accomplish, be it knowledge, be it information, be it skill sets, to use it in a way that could be transferred to a lot more people outside. So I just always have seen myself as grateful for the opportunities, but also aware of the responsibility that comes with that opportunity to continue inspiring, continue, sharing information, sharing knowledge, because we're all gifted by something, obviously God first. So that's how I've always seen the opportunities I've been blessed with, but also very proud of my Gambian identity, my African identity, and what I think is a very, very exciting time to be a young African professional in this world that we're in right now as well too. So definitely.
Obviously, that's really beautiful of you to share that part. Now, it's important. I always say that we all have a story. And of course, in as much as we are quick to say, I wish I had what he has, I wish my family provided what his family provided me. Besides all that, there still is a story. So if you can perhaps push us towards your journey from your childhood to where you are now.
Yeah, so my family moved back to Gambia when I was 7. And I think it's very important because I think oftentimes that period between 5 to 18 years old is the most formative part of your life, where you get to, have a strong sense of identity, know who you are. And I'm really lucky that those years found me in Gambia. So I tell people that's when I got to know Gambia. That's when I got to start speaking our local languages, Wolof and Mandinka. So I had a very Gambian experience in terms of schooling, doing Mrs. Ndao's, doing Gambia High. And when I look back at it, it's so much of who I am as well, too. And I think it's helped me build my moral compass in life. So that's definitely a huge aspect of the story. But also, I mean, transitioning back to the United States, where I also spent a significant time of my adulthood, it's nothing ordinary. I lived the life of just a Black man in America, struggling to, find a way to educate yourself, find a way to, get a respectable job, find a way to start taking care of your family. So I think there's definitely a duality to my experience. But I think on the backdrop as well, too, is family. Anybody who knows me knows family is very important. And I think I've always been fortunate. Part of my story is my family story, because I come from a family of 5 who have always been supportive, from my older brother, older sister, to younger brother, younger sister. But that's honestly the story. It's one of 2 worlds, but it's also one that stems from a deep sense of appreciation for everything that comes with, being Gambia, going to school in Gambia, being raised in Gambia, but also living in the USA as an adult, and now transitioning back on the continent as well.
Wow, that's really beautiful. Now, that would warrant my next question. That is to say, you've mentioned that family is very important, and I am on the same vein with you when it comes to that. But would you have said, if it wasn't for the support that you received, we would have known you as Dr. Ismaila, the pharmacist?
Yeah, no, it wouldn't have happened. And it's funny because I think the idea of even having the doctor in front of my name means more to my dad than it does me. And I'll tell you why, Sira, because I think as human beings, what we do for a living is not who we are as human beings. And it's very easy for our generation for people to label you for what you do. But I think it takes away so many aspects of who you are. But I think my family has been my anchor. And when I talk about family, obviously now I also have a family of my own as well too. They're my support system. They're the reason why I'm able to do a lot of things that I do. And I think the beauty about family is they believe in you in moments where even you may not believe in yourself. And from a parent standpoint, the amount of prayer, the amount of protection, the amount of guidance that you get from our parents, culturally, it's always part of any human being who is able to achieve some things. You have had blessings of your parents, in return, you always want to make sure you carry their name from a respectful standpoint and you make them proud. But it's so much of who I am. Anybody who knows me know I am nothing without my family, but also all the academic accolades that I've been able to accomplish are just tools that I've used to hopefully try to do something. But the title, definitely, I'm very careful sometimes in making sure the title or what I do doesn't define the whole person that I am.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you so much. So still getting to discover you. Now, we are now discovering you from your school days.
Yeah.
What kind of a student would you say you were?
Oh, man, I was a very distracted student, and I'll tell you why. I did not think the way school was structured in the Gambia, it created an avenue for somebody to be curious about how the world works. Because it's very study, memorize, pass, study, memorize, pass. And fortunately, I had really good memorization skills. So on paper, it seemed like I was a good student, which comes with a lot of privileges in Gambia, because every class they'll tell you, okay, these 5, 6 students are the smart students and they get all the privileges. But there were people who always worked harder than I did in school. There were people who always studied harder than I did. I was very distracted because I was curious and into a lot of different things in school, in Gambia especially as well too. So academically, you would say, okay, I was a top performer academically, but when it comes to actually being a good student, studying all the time, it wasn't who I was. It just so happened that academics, I had a good foundation and it transitioned over. But I think the most memorable times in school that I remember did not happen in the classroom. In Gambia, I was very involved in extracurricular activities, which is why I'm a huge proponent of extracurricular activities, be it drama, be it sports, be it, taking up leadership responsibilities, youth advocacy that I did in high school with Buffalo at the time. Just so many different things outside the classroom, I think defined my school years more than academically how well I performed, which I did perform extremely well, but it wasn't because I was a diligent or quote unquote hardworking student, because a lot of people always work definitely harder than I did.
Obviously, yeah, it's important to lament on that perspective, because oftentimes academics matter, it does, but of course I am someone that also emphasizes a lot here on the importance of extracurricular activities, because for one, it might help. I'll let you say that. Now, we also focus so much on when it comes to public speaking, because oftentimes we do find ourselves challenged in that regard. Now, how has extracurricular activities, or if you like, how was it for the first time when you stood in public, perhaps in school days, and then you had to speak? How was the experience for you?
It's interesting, and I know this is very weird. So my father he was a career civil servant, diplomat. So I tell people I started public speaking training maybe before I was even 10 years old, because we would literally give speeches at home, as siblings. We'll give speeches to my dad, he'll evaluate it. We used to study public speakers like Louis Farrakhan, a lot of things. So my journey started so early. So I actually don't have a recollection of ever being, nervous about speaking in public, because the training started very early. So even in school, when it came time, I was head boy in Gambia High. Obviously, that came with public speaking opportunities. So I always have been practicing, right? So even it's easy now because I've had over almost 25 years of training, but I tell people I'm still learning how better to communicate, because I think public speaking is such an important facet or skill to have. Sometimes it determines what opportunities you have in life and what opportunities you don't. But everybody's journey starts somewhere. So I tell people, don't compare somebody's chapter 20 in public speaking to your chapter 2. You just have to commit to be able to communicate and find your voice, because at the end of the day, that's what's most important. Do I still get nervous sometimes? Absolutely. Because what you're saying, who you're saying it to, how you're saying it, all these things could bring some sentiments of anxiety when it comes to public speaking. But out of all the skills that are non-academic related, I think public speaking is the most important soft skill that people should have. And I think we need to do a better job with training and giving a lot of young people an opportunity to find their voice through public speaking, because I'm a byproduct of years and years of practice. To this day, I'm still a member of public speaking clubs like Toastmasters International. So I'm always a student of the craft, because I think it's extremely essential. And now with what I do, I can't avoid not speaking. So I study it as if I'm still in public speaking school.
Obviously. Okay, so now I'm sure a young person in Gambia watching us right now might be saying, well, yeah, he's got the opportunity at least to travel, that was a diplomat. So basically it boils down to the first question that I asked, that is, he's got all these opportunities. So it's like easy for him to make it. What message would you have for that young person?
I think I'll be dishonest if I don't acknowledge privilege. But also, a lot of people have been privileged, but still not put in the work themselves to actualize certain things. Because in life, nobody's going to hand you something. They could provide opportunities, but also you could ruin opportunities. I think everybody, the best way to look at it, and I still practice this now, I can control all the factors that are outside of me. What I could control is I'm going to commit to being a better version of myself, improving something in me every single day continuously. And that's going to lead to different opportunities, because there's also individuals that have had way less, but have achieved way more in life. So I think it's one of those things where you could focus on what you did not have, or you could focus on what's inside of you and where you want to go. So for most people, when I talk to them, it's like, okay, you as an individual, where are you now? And what aspects of your life do you want to improve that you have control over as well, too? Because throughout history, it's not like even Gambian society, people that generations in the past, we may consider, well, these people were lucky, they had X, Y, and Z. That never equals a fulfilling life. That never equals an impactful life. That never equals a human being who's committed to self-development, because those things are completely separate as well, too. And no matter how much opportunities you have, if you are unwilling to have your own map as a human being and your own mirror to hold yourself accountable, to love yourself just as much, everything that happens afterwards would not matter. So I tell them, start with you and control what you could control. And know that whatever is in you, everybody has a gift in something. The sooner you find that gift, the more fulfilling of an experience you will have as a human being.
Obviously. Well, I always mention that. Well, sometimes it's not bad to actually compare, but do not just compare and limit yourself as to what you can do, because we all are gifted in various ways. But of course, sometimes the mentality does matter. So what would you say to the saying that says you can have a growth mindset, but if you have because of the scarcity of the area that you are, it limits your mindset to what you see.
That's very true, and I think, especially young people in the Gambia, just by virtue of being born in the Gambia, comes with limitations. And I'm a very honest communicator. I'm not going to act like, oh, don't worry about it, everything's no. We have a lot of limitations of growth in our ecosystem that makes us have to do twice as much to get half as much. That's the reality. But through that process of having to fight a little bit harder to get out of something, you now develop a level of resiliency and skill sets that actually makes you a little bit more advanced from people who may have an area of abundance. So that's why I always tell people, Gambians especially, where sometimes we're disadvantaged just by being in the Gambia, right? But also that is an advantage, because if you could make it out of Gambia, you could make it out of anywhere in the world, which is why the average Gambian, the moment their skill set or whatever they do leaves Gambia, it becomes way more valuable, because it's so much harder sometimes in our ecosystem. We have cultural dynamics, we have economic dynamics, we have family dynamics, but all those things are areas of strength, and it builds resiliency as well too. But the honest reality is now we are in our professional space. Our responsibility is, how do we build a next generation that makes it a little bit easier for the Gambian who is 2 years old right now, so that when they're 16, 17, they don't have to fight twice as hard just to get half as much. So every generation has a responsibility to leave the place just slightly better, so that people behind you don't have to fight as hard to make it out. But I think I'm very hopeful, because 20 years ago, platforms like Generation Next did not exist.
Right.
In this day and age, there's certain things, technology being one of them, communication, and the positive use of media can change things faster than 10, 20 years ago. So we also have a responsibility to know that with technology, with media, with positive communication, what used to take people 10 years to accomplish, we could accomplish it in 2 years. 2 years times 5 becomes 10 years of progress that we could actualize. So we also don't want to miss out on the opportunity, because Sita, we also see other nations, Asian nations, or nations who are also less than, who are leveraging this new world that we live in, where now Philippines in the past, for example, they could consider them as an impoverished nation, but they are getting so much employment from companies outside of Philippines because they're committed to leveraging technology, to building their skills. So we also can't be victims of our circumstance. We have to find ways to go around the obstacles that are in front of us, and do it together as well too, where we support each other, we help each other, we encourage each other, we root for each other, because I think that's so important.
Certainly. Now, so of course, I've managed to brought a whole lot of entrepreneurs, if you like. Of course, young people who are thriving, coming up with their own businesses. But oftentimes, challenges like I said, life itself is a challenge. So definitely there would be challenge. But oftentimes, what we do here is that there are institutions. It's true. But do we have the right people in those institutions? Of course, in Gambia, we understand others would say it's very difficult. You would be an example because you are with your own business. So can you take us through the process it took you to actually have to come up with your own business? Was it also the same challenge that you had to face when it comes to some of the logistic involved? And take us through that process.
Yeah, so Gambia is arguably one of the worst places to do business. And I'll tell you why. And I'm just going to say, like the Olaf people say, Kula buga mola sona. You only criticize something that you love, but also us as entrepreneurs in Gambia have a responsibility to paint a true picture. That way, whoever's starting a business after me, they don't have to go through what I went through to exist. That's one reality. Right. On the other reality, if you create a business that offers value to people, that people could outperform and outweigh the challenges that the system does. So there's two parts to it. But I'll tell you why it's difficult for businesses. Growing up, if you remember, people had money and then they started a business.
Right.
So being a businessman was associated with somebody who is wealthy. Our generation, you could argue that we are less fortunate, even from a financial standpoint, than some of our parents. We have an idea and want to change something so bad, but we don't have money. So we go into business to create value in order to build wealth for ourselves and our future generations. So there's a difference there. So no matter how good your idea is, your one limitation in Gambia and a lot of African countries is access to capital, because the infrastructure doesn't really incubate good ideas that could help our population. And I often say there's not a single problem in Gambia that a local business doesn't already have an idea and a solution for. Yeah. They are just not pushed forward and allowed to thrive in a way that benefits us, which is why Gambia is a very lucrative place to do business if you are not African and you just want to come to Africa to do business, because the system is not going to support and protect its own. It's just whoever could come is free for all, right? So that's part of the reality. But also some of our regulations and laws, they're quite honestly outdated. And if you see in 2023, you cannot use laws that are even 25 years old to govern a new world in 2023 with technology, with access, with the amount of young people that you have. What happens is you start slowing down growth, and there's so many barriers to be successful. Just think about doing a business. You have to know somebody. The registration process is long. If you require a space, rent system is you have to pay 1 year in advance. So that's capital. You know, the banks will not give you a loan that is reasonable. We don't have government loans for small businesses. So these are all these things and challenges. And then you have the human element of it. If your business, if you're in the service industry, for example, meaning you need human beings to run your business. Now you have the challenge of human capital. So you have to spend so much money on and energy on human development to build people with skills to deliver results. So those are all the challenges that are there. And I would say, is it getting better? Maybe it's better today than it was 10 years ago, but it's still not good enough where most good ideas are dying in Gambia because they don't have enough oxygen. And I think it's very disheartening when you have a solution, but by virtue of also just existing in Gambia becomes a disadvantage. But you look around and somebody who may not be Gambian or African comes, and within 5 years, they've generated so much wealth in Gambia without contributing nothing to the Gambia. So you're like, oh, there's no money in the country. What do you mean there's no money in the country? People who are not Africans are making so much money in Gambia. They're making it from somewhere, right? So I think it's very difficult. And, you know, it's easy to point fingers, say, this is why. But I think collectively, I just don't think we're committed to building businesses that last. We're not committed to building generational wealth. It's unfortunate that since independence, there's very few companies that we could say is Gambian owned and it's lasted 2 generations. Wow. That's always a sign that the system is not right, because companies, even if you're successful, you last 1 generation. But very few Gambian companies where the owner was Gambian, they're as Gambian as they come, have lasted 2 generations in Gambia. All the great companies that we had when we were growing up, where are they now, right? But we also are seeing non-Gambian entities who are lasting 2 generations, right? So there's a lot of honest conversations we need to have. And I think it's always harder for some of us that are willing to make the sacrifice, but also we can't do it for so long because the same idea, if we take it somewhere, the reward happens so much quicker that it becomes unrealistic to expect people to keep sacrificing when the ecosystem, honestly, is not ready for sustainable change.
Wow. It's disheartening. Well, should that be the word to say? But anyways, it's the honest truth, and we better say the truth, and hopefully we would get things in place. As young people, it's important that of course we recognize this and march to make sure that at least, if not our generation, maybe our children's generation. Mm-hmm. But that's the objective. So what would you say would be the way forward for young people? Because to be quite honest, it can be very, very discouraging to realize that most of us young people, if you like, perhaps if you're within the corners of this country, you see majority of young people who are literally not engaged in activities, perhaps I would like to believe are not meaningful. Mm-hmm. What message would you have for them, and how best can we unite as young people to make sure that, yes, we identify there is a problem. Now, what can we do to bring solutions to these problems?
So I think there's 2 fronts to it. Any country that has a lot of young people actually have the best opportunity to develop that country faster, right? And I'll tell you why. If somebody at 18 years old starts learning a skill, right? And let's say by the time they're 25, they have a level of mastery in that skill, they could work for 25 years more and still be strong and able to start multiplying what it is that they learn, right? So there's 2 components to it. The first component is skill acquisition. I think any young person, the moment you turn 18, whether you graduate high school or not, you need to try to find something that you're willing to learn because you love it, to be really good at it before you're 25, right? So that skill acquisition, and that's one of those things where don't worry about what's wrong around you. Find something that you love and you think you could be good at and start committing to learning it, not making money off of it, but learning it for about 5 years. That way you are employable, right? That's a critical step sometimes we miss because there's not roadmaps to how we could change Gambia. So from an individual standpoint, I think it's skill acquisition and apprenticeship. And I mentioned Philippines in the past because majority of them, even if they don't have high school degrees, they are spending hours on YouTube learning a skill that if you acquire amount of hours learning how to do one thing, somebody's going to pay for it because they are looking for you. And most of the times, Gambian, even employers are looking for people with a skill set that is tangible. So that's the individual responsibility young people need to have. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be in arts, it could be in science, it could be in media, it could be in craft, it could be anything that you're willing to learn for 5 years to hone in on the skill. You have something that you could also teach and monetize for yourself. But also the honesty is sometimes young people, we may get caught up with, saying what's wrong in the environment without looking inwards to see how am I developing myself to make myself worthy of employment, worthy of a particular pay wage. And I think that's the biggest difference with a lot of ecosystems where young people are hungry for skill acquisition. That's one. The responsibility on the other end is people like us. Job creation. Any nation cannot progress economically if we are not creating jobs for people of that nation. If you pay attention to the way Gambia moves, people are not hiring enough. And we have this massive opportunity, a lot of young people, the employment rate, if you remove all the people the government employs, our employment rate is so low if you remove everybody who works for the government. Because companies are also not establishing themselves to be job-creating vehicles. A lot of companies are creating themselves to be revenue-generating companies, right? And most people, they don't pay attention to it, but let's say if you are making $100 of profit a day, what percentage of that profit are you contributing towards human development by providing employment, right? So we're not creating a lot of employment. Yes, we need skill acquisition from the individuals, but also how many companies in the Gambia that are extremely lucrative are paying 40% of their revenue on employment? They're not, because they don't have to. And that's why if you notice how the Gambia works, people don't like going into service-oriented companies. They like going into product-oriented companies because you need less people to sell products than you do offering services. So even non-Africans, when they come, they don't go into the service industry. Commodity trading, products. Buy it for $1, sell it for $5. One person is doing all the selling. So if you notice our economy, and we don't have natural resources in Gambia yet, at least. So the only thing we could really export is services. Human resources is Gambia's only way out. But if we do not have an ecosystem where skill acquisition is happening with the young people, on the other side, job creation is happening from companies, we're always going to be on this cycle where, and remember, every year, thousands of Gambians join the unemployment pool, right? So it's very complex, but I think it has to be a two-sided approach because consider the average age in Gambia is 16 years old. Just think about that. Almost half of our population has not celebrated 18 years old. So if over the next 10 years we focus on that, Gambia could be one of the fastest growing countries in Africa because our advantage is for every 18-year-old Gambian we have at least 25 years of your brain power to contribute to change the nation, where by the time that 2-year-old Gambian is 18, they're going to grow up in a Gambia that we would not be able to recognize.
Certainly, that is. I've got a question from one of the audience,
Yeah.
and the question says, it says, nowadays, students or the youth in general, upon graduating high school and are about to embark on this journey called life as a young adult, sometimes struggle with finding their sense of direction, especially when it comes to choosing a career path. So, as a reputable youth yourself, with an established career and a role model to young Gambians, what advice would you give brothers and sisters who are determined to make a name for themselves, but just don't know where to start?
That's such an excellent question. Whoever asked that, thank you so much for that beautiful question. I'm gonna use myself for an example.
That's Betty. I've got the name Betty. The name
Betty,
is Betty.
thank you, Betty.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Betty. Follow your curiosities in life, but also realize that it's unrealistic for you to decide what you're going to do for the rest of your life at 18 years old. And I'll tell you why using my story. When I was leaving to go to university, I was leaving to go be a civil engineer. I don't know why. To this day, I don't know why. 2 weeks into university, I was like, you know what? I want to go into the medical field. I changed my major to chemistry. I did chemistry as an undergraduate. I was thinking medical school, dental school, pharmacy school, PhD. I fell in love with pharmacy for a lot of different reasons. I went into pharmacy, right? I graduated, started working at a strictly healthcare professional. And I'm like, I want to transition from being an employee to being an employer, but also having the creativity to create ideas that could make people's life better. So I made another switch into the world of business and entrepreneurship, right? So it's unrealistic for me to think that the 18-year-old Ismaila could have mapped out what it is that I'm doing now. But the one thing that was constant is whatever I was curious about, I started paying attention to and learning more about, right? So my biggest advice to a lot of people is most of the times there's something that when you're doing it, it doesn't feel like work. That is God giving you signals that this right here you need to pay attention to, because that's where the gift for you is. So as a young person, start following your curiosities. Even before you graduate high school, start figuring out, is it media that you like? Is it science that you like? And find out, why do you like it? Because after a while, your purpose will start guiding which career fields that you go into. And I promise you, you're going to be good at certain things that come so natural to you that other people have to put in a lot of effort to do. And which is why I tell people you have the right to make all the mistakes between that 18 to 25, 26 window. That should be your exploration and apprenticeship period, because oftentimes you have the blessing of not having a lot of responsibilities. You don't have a family to take care of. So explore what you're curious about and be a student of life. Even if you think media is something you love, commit to, okay, for the next year, I'm going to spend X amount of hours on YouTube learning about media. And you'll always know when something is not for you, because it becomes very difficult to commit to, right? That's the biggest thing. Follow your curiosities and know that there's chapters in life. What you're going to be doing at 18 is going to be different from what you're going to be doing at 28. It's going to be different from what you're going to be doing at 38, which is why I'm not even a fan of how we educate some of our children, where from 9th grade, the school system told me that I was a science student, meaning they have programmed my brain to think that I could only have a career in the sciences. But me at 37 years old right now, I'm in business. I'm doing literature work. Nothing that has to do with me being a science student at 9th grade in Gambia High School. So it just goes to show you how follow your passions, follow your curiosities, and whatever you do, as long as it's making the people around you better while you're contributing something, that the money and everything else is going to take care of itself. But most of the times people are curious about something. Listen to that inner voice inside of you, because God is gifting you with something that you now have to put in the work, and then you'll find a lot of fulfillment in that.
Thank you so much for that piece of advice. As you were speaking, I related to that because sometimes when you're from one job to another, if you like, oftentimes you have people tell you that's not what you study. That's not your field of study. Oftentimes you have people tell you that. Okay, I may use myself as an example where, from high school, I didn't go straight into tertiary education. From high school, went into a bit of journalism to the hotel industry now with, of course, unique solutions. But the media part is what I'm passionate about. And like you said, within this age range, it's important that you explore, let the mistakes be committed. And eventually you align, like yourself, you happen to align with the pharmacist, right? So oftentimes it might take a long process, but not necessarily limiting you to, of course, this is where you started, this is where you should limit yourself to. So that's a really great piece of advice. Perhaps you may want to add few things.
And I'm so glad you mentioned it, because even if you use yourself an example, every exploration journey, right? Even if you end up not liking it, there's gonna be one skill set you're gonna take along to your next opportunity that's gonna be so valuable, right? I tell people customer service, for example, comes natural to me because my job when I was a student in college, I was a waiter at restaurants in America, right? I've worked in factories in America assembling motor parts for vehicles overnight. All those jobs, I've learned something tangible that have added to where I am now. But also we have to be very careful about how this day and age media, social media, we celebrate successes too much as if everybody's supposed to be Elon Musk by the age of 30 years old. But the reality tells you actually the most successful people in life truly find themselves in their 40s and in their 50s. Because the 20s, you should be in a lab, exploring, figuring it out. In the 30s, you're now getting to kind of know what you're good at, understanding your value proposition. And in the 40s and 50s is really when you start doing meaningful work. But if you look on social media, they'll tell you by 30, you have to be at the mountaintop. And it puts so much pressure on young people of today where they feel like I need to figure it out so quick. All my classmates are doing X, Y, and Z. And then it comes with anxiety, self-doubt, right? And this is coming from me where I was in school till I was 28 years old.
Wow.
So I know looking around and people that I went to high school with have had a career of 4 years and I'm like still in school, right? So we have to remember that life is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Just focus on improving yourself and then God will guide you in a path that you will find so much fulfillment. But also remember that you don't have to be one thing. And I'm glad you mentioned your story, and it's powerful because we don't have to live in one box. We could have multiple interests that could give you 3 different fulfillments. I like sports, I like writing, I like business, I like science. I could talk to you strictly about healthcare and you would never know that I write. I could talk to you about literature and sports and you'll never know that I'm a healthcare professional, because we also are more than one thing. But I think it's so important to explore, to commit to growth and self-development, especially as young people of today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ismaila. We wouldn't want to take another minute of your time because we are privileged that you've spent this amount of time with us. Mohammed, you've got a question. Okay, looks like I've got another question before we go. A quick one. Okay, another one says, many a time, young people depends on others for their success. Should one always wait for support before starting something to add value to their life? That's
such a good question. And I'll tell you something interesting. Everybody around you, when you're pursuing whatever it is you're pursuing, they see the need to support you before you have the courage to ask. And I'm telling you this from a person who I've employed a lot of young Gambians, because we see the hunger and the commitment, right? It's always easy for somebody will always see you and say, you know, Sarah deserves X, Y, and Z. this opportunity, let me call Sarah, because they trust your level of commitment to something, and God will always find an angel in your life and present it at the right time, provided you are also being honest and doing the work. So I tell people, focus on a couple of things: being authentic, being honest with how much effort you're putting into something, and support will come. That support may come from family, it may not come from family, because people believe in the human spirit. So anytime they see that you're committed to something, I've had so many moments where support comes from the most unexpected areas. But when I look deep down inside, I've prayed about it, I've committed to it, I've done the hard work when nobody's looking, but it just takes one person for that support to come. So I tell people, focus on your level of commitment to something. And I guarantee you, people are always watching to see who is worthy of support, because people who are benevolent, sometimes they don't want to give it to the wrong suitor. So that's the best way I could answer that question. But I think it's very important, but the support will come. And even if the support doesn't come, the biggest supporter that we have in life is God. So you don't need a middleman between you and God. So I just believe that if it's for you, God's timing is always the best timing, and any obstacle that is in the way that could be man-made, God has a way of making it disappear at the right time for you.
Certainly, obviously. Thank you so much, Doctor. At this point, of course, I would have loved, I'm sure more questions are coming. I would have loved to let us continue, but of course, because of time, we would draw the curtain here. Once again, we appreciate you on this show. Of course, it meant a lot. And perhaps you may want to talk about life a little bit, on life as a hype and on your new book, because I've been following you on is it LinkedIn? And I've seen, the level of the progress you of course you always continue to make. So perhaps you may want to throw one or two things for young people who may want to read the book but don't know how to get it.
Yeah, so I think it's just a very exciting, creative product that I've been working on over the years. I found out that I fell in love with writing a couple of years ago, honestly. But similar to what we talked about, curiosities. I started writing and I felt like, okay, this is something I really want to do, because we don't write a lot as well. So we consume a lot of stories that we don't see ourselves in it. So life as a hyphen, for somebody who's lived between two worlds, is an expression of how I've also navigating the complexities of life. So many questions that came up in the interview, if somebody reads the book, they'll see that sometimes even something that looks polished and ready-made is still on a journey to figure out how they want to live the most fulfilled life. It also addresses a lot of uncomfortable truths about our culture that we're not talking about as young people. And it could range from very different things that affect women in the Gambia, that affect young men in the Gambia, how emotionally we're not oriented sometimes, a lot of things that are considered taboo as well. So the book is going to be available in Gambia this month as well, too. It's already available to the US and other markets. But I think it's just also a story. Everybody who reads the book will see themselves in it. But I think for young professionals, hopefully through things that I still struggle with to this day, it'll give them a permission to be vulnerable, both men and women. It'll give them a permission to continue on that journey of self-exploration, but also know that there's always hope on the other side as well. So I'm excited for people to get a hand on it, because I think it'll be extremely valuable.
Obviously, we would follow to make sure once it's available, because I, for one, would love to read it. Looks like I have another question.
Yes.
Let me allow you answer this. I'm sorry. Yeah. It says, what advice would you give to that person who lost hope in life? Oh.
Man, that's it's a good question, but I want to tell that person that they are not alone. Any person who has had something to celebrate or be celebrated for had a moment where hope was scarce, right? But there's always something inside of you that you should have a reason to keep going for. Oftentimes it should be you. For some people, it could be their children. Some people, it could be their parents, right? Because we also have to realize that whatever your relationship with God is, it doesn't matter how you seek God. This has nothing to do with one religion. Whatever your relationship with God is, you have to know that he already knows what's in front of you, and he understands everything that you've gone past, behind you. So part of it is just being willing to have one reason to wake up and keep going until you make your breakthrough, right? But you're not alone in this. Any ready-made person that you think you see has had moments where they're fighting and finding hope in a place where it just doesn't seem like there's a lot. But you were born for a reason. Everybody who's existing is a miracle, and God has already put you on a journey to do something in this world, right? So as long as you maintain that faith, I think it allows you to find a reason why, just to keep going. And I think things will start changing, but a lot of people that you think are perfect still sometimes struggle finding hope, because that's the nature of life, is suffering. So everybody's going through a battle on their own, but I really, really hope whoever that person is, they don't give up on themselves, because they're too valuable to the world to give up on themselves.
Oh, I'm emotional. Thank you. Thank you so much, Doctor. Of course, I believe any young person who is watching by now would have synchronized all the advices you've offered here on this program, and hopefully, inshallah, we would continue the effort, and we shall not relent. We shall keep forging so long we have people like yourself who are always motivating us. Of course, always have a reason to live, and God is great. So
Wow. I know. Thank you so much, Sarah. It means a lot for you to reach out. I'm really proud of what you're doing. I think this is more fruitful than any kind of content our young people are consuming. So keep up the good work to you, Mohammed, and the entire team with Generation Next. And I wish you an abundance of success and excited about all the other things that you're going to do as well, too. So I'm really grateful and really, really proud of what you've been able to accomplish as well. So keep up the good work.
Merci beaucoup. Okay, dear audience, here it's where we draw the curtain until we come your way again. It's a cheers from the entire Generation Next team.
Thank you.